So this happened when I was 14 or 15 and often stayed over at my cousin's and her husband's house. We'll call them Skylar and Josh, female 24, male 26 at the time. I had been staying at their house for a week straight prior to the incident with no issues. It was during the summertime, in a neighborhood that was pretty rapidly expanding. You know those monochrome suburban nightmare cul-de-sacs. There are tons of those half-finished houses lining the far end of the neighborhood. I feel this info is pretty important. Anyways, Josh and I were avid movie watchers and stayed up most nights watching whatever looked good. That night, Skylar went to bed early and we stayed up to watch Would You Rather and then Ridiculous 6. Movie sucks, by the way. Semi-important context. Josh is a smoker and goes out to the back patio for a cigarette every so often, especially at night when he takes their beagle, Banjo, out to pee. I ended up sleeping through the movie on one of their two couches. The couch is backed against the wall, and to the left of it is a window into the backyard. It was the only window in the living room. At some point, I keep hearing Banjo whomping and hollering in the playroom, then again in the kitchen, then the playroom, and so on and so forth. The dog is going apeshit in literally every room on the first floor, but he is a clingy dog that hated when Skylar and Josh shut him out of the room, so I figured he was just whining. He's also a beagle, so we're used to him being vocal. In hindsight, I probably should have wondered why he was running from room to room. Whatever, I tried to sleep through it. After a good while of Banjo flipping his shit in what I think is a kitchen, he kinda goes quiet. But he wakes me up again growling out the window right next to the couch I'm sleeping on. He would not be still. I still didn't get up. I fell back asleep for a bit. Then out of nowhere, he jumps on the couch right next to my stomach and starts losing his shit barking and howling. That wasn't what woke me up though. It was a light shining from the outside of the window right in my face. I wasn't scared at first, more confused than anything, since my eyes hadn't adjusted at that point. Then the flashlight shines up right on the man's face, and he looks identical to Josh. Could have been twins. He's crouched down with his face almost right against the glass, and when I see him, I jump really hard. I don't remember if I screamed, but the man started laughing at me. I can hear from the other side of the window. However, because I'm big stupid, I assume Josh is on a smoke break, just trying to spook me. I start walking upstairs, and as I pass their kitchen clock, it was like 4 a.m. I didn't even put two and two together that Josh had no reason to be outside or awake at this hour. I'm so groggy, but also unnerved at this point, so I go to sleep on the upstairs hallway floor. I didn't go alert Skylar of what just happened, mostly because she's a cranky bitch when you wake her up, and I was still more willing to accept the idea that it was Josh being an idiot on a smoke break rather than some maniac scoping the house. The next afternoon I bring it up to them, and they sort of write it off, ask me if I'm sure that I wasn't dreaming, etc. But they did say they heard the dog going wild. I check outside where the window is to see if the man dropped any evidence of him being there, and I kinda want to vomit. The tall grass around the house was pressed down like someone was on their knees. I don't even want to know how long this man was sitting there on the grass to have it pressed down still, but I have a feeling that it was pretty long. Banjo sat by the window for a hot minute, and the flashlight thing was the only thing that woke me up. I'm glad I saw the grass though, because it felt so much like a fever dream. Sometimes I still wonder if it happened, but I know it did. My theory is some squatter in one of the unfinished houses was either bored or on something and decided to go on an adventure. But yeah, I would have absolutely gotten my shit rocked in a horror movie at that age. This incident occurred back in late 2021. I was serving in the military stationed in California and lived off base at the time. It was around 9 p.m. when I was driving home from work. I pulled into my apartment parking garage and noticed a guy I'd never seen before, and he did not live here. He was just standing there, leaning against one of the support columns, just staring through my windshield. I tried to gauge what his intentions were by giving him the old Midwest, "Hey," by raising my finger over my steering wheel. I got nothing, just a blank stare right back at me. At this moment, I knew something wasn't right. I tried to weigh the options in my head. I can awkwardly back out of a very small parking garage and do a few laps around the neighborhood. I could call my roommate and tell him to come down. Strength in numbers, you know. Or I can be a tough and brave military man. I decided to stop overthinking it and just deal with it on my own. I backed into my parking space, all while guys directly across from my parking spot just staring at me. I again do the Midwest finger wave over the steering wheel, with zero reaction from this guy. I grit my teeth and get out of my car and start walking towards the only staircase up to my apartment, which he was standing directly in front of. So I obviously had to walk right past him. I start approaching and say, "Hey, how's it going?" Just to gauge his friendliness one more time, and got absolutely nothing. So at this point I'm thinking, I'm going to either get stabbed in the neck or shot in the back of the head when I pass him, but nothing happened. I realized that I was overthinking it and began to walk up the stairs to my apartment. I get about a quarter of the way up when I hear running behind me. I started to run up the stairs, skipping a few steps and completely eating shit, cutting my hands and bleeding, but at this point I didn't care at all. I got up and kept going up the stairs and got to my door. This scene was honestly straight out of a horror movie, me trying to get my key in the door, and when I turn around I see him running up the stairs. It honestly felt like it was all in slow motion. I thankfully got the key in and was able to get inside the house, but my motor skills were not all there at this point, so I struggled to lock the door. I braced it with my foot while he tried to get in, and I was able to lock it. He started messing with the door handle and banging on the door while I went to wake up my roommate. I grabbed my gun from my bedroom and we both went and sat in the living room, waiting. After about a minute of this, we decided to call 911, and in about 3 minutes, around 10 squad cars pull up and search the whole area. The guy was nowhere to be found. While finishing my contract in California, I was paranoid every time I went to the garage. I still don't know what his intentions were, and to this day, that's honestly the part that irks me the most. When I was 17, my bedroom had a window looking out to the backyard. The backyard was fenced in, but on the other side of the fence were some woods and a retention pond. I had never been scared of this and kept the blinds open, so when the sun rose in the morning, the natural light would help me wake up. One night, I was up late on my phone with my dog laying in the bed next to me. At around 2 a.m., my dog jumped up and started barking out the window. At first, I thought he was just barking at his reflection and told him to stop. But then I realized he was looking at the left side of the window, where his reflection was on the right. I couldn't see outside the window because I had my lamp on my nightstand. All I could see in the window was the reflection of my bedroom. Not wanting to alert whatever might be out there that I was scared, I faked a yawn, set my phone aside, and turned off the lamp. I then laid down facing the window, and I swear I saw a set of human eyes looking back at me from the left side of the window. I drink a lot of water at night, so I had an empty bottle on my nightstand. I grab it and pretend I didn't realize it was empty. I turned on the lamp and acted like I was going to get water. I went to my parents' room, and my dad told me not to worry. We have these motion-activated floodlights, and they hadn't turned on, so there was no way anything was out there. I went back to my room and told myself I was just seeing things. I closed my blinds and turned my lamp off and got some sleep. I went to take my dog out and decided to check the pine straw bedding underneath my window. It was visibly disturbed. I did my best to ignore that and remember what my dad said about the floodlights. That worked pretty well until my dad tested the floodlights later that day and found that the bulbs had burnt out. To this day, I keep my blinds closed and my lamp off while I sleep. I don't want to risk anything being able to see me, and if something is somehow peeking through my window, I want to know it's there. If there is someone at my window that night, let's not meet. Edit. I just want to say thanks for everyone that commented. I typed this out because of a project I've been working on that caused this memory to resurface. Sometimes just writing something like this down and chucking it into the void helps me deal with it. I'm 22 now, so I'm far enough removed from it that I can mostly just look at it as a weird experience I had. But there is definitely a degree of paranoia left from this and other things I've dealt with. To everyone who had similar experiences, I hope everything turned out okay and that you're doing well. I've interacted with a few of you in the comments and you seem like strong people. To anyone who does this, peeking through window shit, fuck off. This story belongs to my sister. Back in 2009, my then 21-year-old sister was living alone after getting into a fight with my parents. She worked as a waitress while going to school, so obviously money was scarce. She was living in a very bad part of town, in an apartment complex that from far away looked okay, but things got worse once she took a step closer. It was one of those 2-floor South Florida buildings. 5 out of 18 were currently occupied. The rest were in such bad shape that they couldn't be rented. We're talking about holes in the roof, broken pipes, etc. One night, my sister was getting home around 11 p.m. after her shift, and she noticed an old van parked in one of those spots next to the stairs that she had to take up to get to her apartment. I guess natural instincts kicked in because she decided not to use those stairs and to use the other set of stairs on the other end of the building. She had to walk across the entire parking lot to reach those stairs. As she's doing this and going up the stairs, she looks at the van and realizes that there's 2 people in it, sitting in the dark looking at her. She decides to hurry up and sort of sprint to her apartment. By now, she sees these guys got out of their van and they started running up the stairs next to the van to catch her. Her apartment is so close to the stairs that they were running up that by the time she's near her door, they're about halfway through the stairs. She turns around and starts running towards the other set of stairs that she had just came up from. By the time she's going down the stairs, the other guys are chasing her, running on the 2nd floor towards her direction. Going down the stairs, she couldn't run across the parking lot onto the street because they would have caught her, so she ran to the back of the building hoping to jump the fence or something. Unfortunately, the fence was too high, and she obviously wasn't going to make it over. She spots all the way in the corner a big dumpster that has a lock on it. She runs over towards it, hoping to get it and jump the fence and get on the street, but when she jumps, the entire plastic lid collapses with her weight, and she falls into the dumpster. She can hear the guys turning into the area and going, "She must be in one of these apartments." Remember, they are abandoned and some have no windows. So they start calling for her, telling her to get out and not to be scared. She's inside the dumpster, holding the cover with her hands from underneath, making it look as if it was closed. They get near it. She can hear their footsteps. Since the dumpster was locked, I guess they didn't even try to pull the lid. It was this innocent lock holding this thing together that saved my sister's life. Had they pushed the whole thing up, it would have fallen apart and my sister would have been exposed and probably murdered. They went inside the apartments, as she could hear them. The whole thing must have been 40 minutes. They eventually gave up and left. My sister didn't sleep, didn't move, and didn't leave the dumpster till the following morning. She got out once she heard cars and saw daylight. The van wasn't there. She moved back home the same day. I'm a 22-year-old male. This happened when I was 14. My family and I lived in a very safe, upper-class neighborhood in a safe city. Our house was right near a local conservation area, popular for hiking, canoeing, camping, and observing wildlife. I was always a paranoid kid growing up for whatever reason. Thinking back, it was probably from one of those sketchy stranger danger ads they would show my classmates and I in elementary school. Those things were unnerving. My younger brother and I shared a room all growing up. Let's call him Jules. And despite my best efforts to get my parents to build an extension on our place or rejig the layout so that I could have my own room, that was still the case that warm June night. It was actually morning, I guess, probably 3 or 3:30 a.m. or so, when I was woken up from my dreamland by the sound of a voice in my room. Obviously, I wasn't too worried or anything. Sometimes my brother would talk in his sleep or go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and just like a typical youngest child, failed to be considerate of his snoozing brother in the bed next to him. This time was different though. I wake up in a groggy state and can make out a terrified expression on Jules' face. I asked him what he was up to, and he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Oh, someone's being raped outside." Now, I hadn't checked at this time, so I brushed it off, telling him, "Go back to sleep, you're just dreaming." That's when he got louder and more assertive. This snapped me into reality and I asked him, "What did you just say?" He got quiet and repeated what he said before. I didn't know what to do. I was just frozen, laying there, and that's when I heard it. "Help me, I'm being raped," coming directly in front of our house. Jules in my bedroom faced the street, and because it was so warm that night, we left our window open a crack about a couple inches, so the cries for help traveled to my ears without difficulty. I suddenly sprung up from my bed and told him not to move. I sprinted down the hall to my parents' room. I swung open the door and they both woke up asking me what the heck I was doing, waking them up in the middle of the night. I told them, "Someone is being raped outside our house right now." My dad, my hero, didn't even waste a second or question me one bit. He threw on some pajama pants and rushed downstairs. I'm not the kind of kid that would lie about something like that, as some sort of twisted prank or anything. My mom starts crying and grabs the landline beside her bed, calling 911, as she can now hear the faint cries for help, even from the other side of the house. My younger sister woke up from her room too, crying, asking me what's going on. We huddled in my room, and for the first time we peered out the blinds to see what was transpiring on the streets below. My mom looked first and seemed confused. Down at the end of our driveway was a man, maybe 25, in his boxers, alone. Then we see my dad flick on all the house lights and begin to walk down the driveway towards him, shirtless, with my Louisville Slugger baseball bat in hand. The man stares at him, and at this point, a bunch of our neighbors had woken up, and we see them watching from their doorways. The man then points to our neighbor across the street and yells, "It was you raped me." To which my dad calmly responds, "What happened to you? Do you need help?" The man then springs up and hits the back of the windshield of my family van, and my dad says, "If you do that again, I'm going to break your legs." We hear the police sirens coming down the street, and now 5 cops pull up. After a few minutes, my dad comes back inside. He tells me everything's fine, that the guy was strung out on heroin and wandered away from his friend's campsite in the conservation area. My whole fam was quite shook up, to put it lightly, and nothing like that ever happened again in our neighborhood. That's one image I'll never forget though. My badass dad walking shirtless down the driveway to stop a potential rape with a baseball bat. I came home around 12 a.m. to a house I share with 4 roommates. When I walk on the sidewalk, I notice a man across the street facing the other side, seemingly doing nothing. I pass by and enter my house, locking the door, and went to the kitchen, passing one of my roommates on the living room couch. The hallway from the front door opens to the living room and then goes to the kitchen. When I left the kitchen, I saw the dark outline through the window and stopped to focus my eyes. My couch roommate looked at me confused, as I had just stopped in my tracks. The outer door was open, and the man from across the street was looking in, and then started turning the knob. As I heard the knob start rattling, I said something like, "There's a fucking guy at our door." My roommate got up from the couch alarmed, and we got closer to the door. I could see the man's face clearer now, pressed up against the door window. His face was blank. He had long, oily hair and pockmarks on his cheeks. His expression made me feel incredibly uncomfortable, as it seemed like he was looking through us, with no recognition of us. My roommate called down to my basement roommate to make sure the door leading to the backyard was locked. I got closer to the man as he kept trying the handle, and went upstairs to alarm my other roommate. When I came back down, the man wasn't at the door anymore, so we peered out the window, only to see him standing in our walkway, looking across the street. Reflecting on this, I'm just happy I remembered to lock the door, because we'd often stupidly forget and spend the night with our door unlocked. I can't imagine if the door was unlocked and he stepped into our house. I wonder how this would have went. I think about how he would have probably have walked through the hallway, and my roommate on the couch would have just seen a stranger walk into our living room and scare the shit out of him. Most likely this guy was just drugged out by the way his expression was, but who knows what intentions he had. Let's not meet. It's 4 a.m. as I'm typing this, trying to shake off the nerves. I'd just fallen asleep after a night out at the bar, celebrating my partner's friend's birthday. I woke up very suddenly to what I thought was the sound of my door trying to open. I thought I was crazy, but decided to send my drunk boyfriend to look through the peephole. He told me that there was a man standing right outside the door. At the same time, however, there was a woman taking her dog out potty. So being the drunk that he was, my boyfriend couldn't tell if these two were together. The situation didn't sit right with me, so I looked through the peephole, but the man was gone. I took watch for about 5 minutes, after which I heard some glass break. Eventually I saw the man walking back in front of my door and around the other side of the building. We have a corner apartment, so I peeked through the blinds on the living room window to try to see him. I saw the man approaching a car right in front of my window. I got scared and stopped looking. I checked again, and he was gone. I then went to look through the bedroom blinds and saw him being handcuffed by a sheriff. We were able to catch the security guard's attention through the bedroom window, and he told us he had been suspicious and was following the man for a while. I really wish my dog was here. He's boarding because of our night out. He would have scared the guy away with his barks. Update. My boyfriend discovered marks on our door frame, indicating that the guy had been messing with our lock to open it. Looks like he went for the latch bolt, which doesn't have a lock. There appears to be no interference with the deadbolt. I'm a 21-year-old female. I live with my grandparents in a large city on a busy road. I was just in bed when I heard the doorbell ring and was about to go answer it, but my grandpa got to the door before me. I am now so glad that he did. I couldn't see the front door from the hallway, but when he opened it, I heard a woman say, "Hi, my name is Taylor. I think I know you." I didn't recognize the name, and my grandpa didn't either, because he told her that he definitely didn't know her. He asked her how he could help her, and I heard him open the door wider and then her quick footsteps as she ran away. After she left, I came out and asked my grandpa what happened. He told me about the interaction with a puzzled look, and I immediately recognized it as suspicious. We have a Ring doorbell, so we pulled up the video it had taken. It showed a young woman covered with tattoos approaching our yard. As she walks up, she whistles loudly to someone off camera. I watch as my grandpa opens the door, and she says that she thinks she knows him. Now, my grandpa, a retired police officer, and tonight, he happened to be wearing his t-shirt with the name of our city's police department on it. When he opens the door wider, she must have noticed his shirt because her eyes widened and she runs away. I watch as the video shows her holding up her arms, crossed in an X while she runs away. A few seconds later, a man crawls out from behind the car parked outside and follows her. Then the woman can be heard whistling again as they walk down the block. My grandpa called the non-emergency police line to report suspicious activity, and 2 officers arrived 15 minutes later to hear our statements and watch the video. They seemed to agree that these were probably 2 addicts working together, casing out the neighborhood to see which houses they could break into. Since there was no proof of a crime committed, the officer gave us an email to send the video to, and left. I can't help but wonder what would have happened if I, a 5'3", 100-pound, 21-year-old young woman, had been the one to answer the door, instead of my grandpa, a 6'2", ex-military, retired police officer. So sketchy couple lurking around the neighborhood, let's not meet. When I was little, my mom always opened up the front screen door in the summer. It's something she always did as we lived in a rural, mostly safe area. It was old and never locked, almost never shut all the way. The dogs always escaped out of it. The room that connected to this door was the middle room with a desk computer in it. One day I was looking for art supplies in that room. Front door open to the screen. I remember I was looking for a few minutes. My mom was in the kitchen. I kept looking and looking, turned around to look somewhere else. There was this burly, gristly-looking man standing there. I'd never seen him before. He must have been staring for a while. When I saw him, he stayed put, still, silent. No knock, no asking for my mother, no hello. I hadn't heard any crunching of the gravel from the car pulling in. Where did he come from? I ran to the kitchen and told my mom that there was a guy standing there. She walked out cautiously. I saw and heard her speak briefly through the screen. Then she shut the front door and locked it. She never talked about it to me, even when I asked questions. And as an adult, she doesn't seem to remember what I remember so vividly, at all. I still mull over, why was he there? Where was his car? Why would he be walking in a rural area with no sidewalks? Why was he silently watching me so close to the door? How long was he there for? What was he planning? Why our house and not the neighbors? I don't know, but I'm glad I turned around when I did. Context: I was living in the Fiji Islands back in 2016, and I was 14 years old. This story happened to my family, but mainly my mom lived it. It was on the 31st of October, and I was at my school for a Halloween-based party, and my parents and my little sister had gone to a family friend's Halloween party, so the house was empty. My party finished at 9 p.m. and my dad picked me up and dropped off my mom's sister at the house because our security alarm was ringing. Because nobody was home, my family obviously called the security company over, and they sent a van with 3 security guards. My mom opens the house and lets everyone in. They check the whole house and they see no one. My mother checks all the cupboards and under the bed with my little sister, who's only 12 at the time. The security guards go outside in the garden and in the basement to check if anyone has been there, and it's not an accidental ring. We don't have any pets. My mom turns on all the lights in the living room and the balcony. She starts to open a window and the gates that protect all the windows to get to the balcony when she looks at the keyhole to put it in, and she knows flip-flops on the floor. She then looks closer and sees that there's 2 pairs of legs hiding real close to each other against the wall underneath the garden sofa. My mom yells out of her lungs, "They're on the balcony! They're on the balcony!" The 2 guys got scared and jumped off the balcony into the garden. One of the guards grabbed the guy, but the second intruder jumps onto the guard, and they run away, jumping over the fence and running into the forest. My mother regrets yelling, and that if she would have came down and talked to the security guards quietly, the guys wouldn't have ran and probably would have been caught. My mother is crying and holding my sister to the side and telling her everything will be okay. The security guards then called the police, and they did report and describe the guys and started to search for them. The cops were here in about a minute, since I live about 100 meters from the closest police station. The guy who jumped lost his hat. There are also flip-flops, and they left socks to use as gloves, and 2 knives. Also, one of the thieves legit shit in our garden. Sadly, the guys were never found, but 2 weeks later, my mom pulls out of the driveway, looks in the rear mirror of her car, and sees what she's 90% sure of, the 2 guys at the opposite house staring at her. The short one had the same new hat, and the other guy had brand new flip-flops. When my mom drove away to the police station, the guys were gone and never to be found again. I got home after with my dad to find my mom and my sister crying. My dad was mad that he didn't stay, but my mom had drank and could not drive. Luckily, my mom saw them before she opened the window. Otherwise, what could have happened? Now, how did the 2 guys get on the balcony? Well, it's gonna sound stupid, but right next to the balcony where they were hiding are like 2 wooden poles linked with a weird plank. My dad asked the landlord to get rid of it, but the landlord did not want to. To give you more about this pole thingy, me at 15, I could jump and climb onto the balcony, 'cause I did it to sneak out of the house to go see my girlfriend at the time. I am now 21 and live in Australia, and even though I did not live this myself, it made me really scared 'cause I was young and now I live alone and have to check the entirety of my house to make sure the house is always locked, to the point that I lock myself out of the house way too many times. I'm a woman in my 30s who lives alone in a small house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in the UK. The street is a maze of rows away from the main road, which means that other than delivery drivers and the occasional salesperson, you very rarely see anyone that you don't recognize. I don't exactly know all my neighbors, but I know what they look like, and I know where they live. I can recognize their cars, etc. The weirdness happened over a space of a few months several years back. I work from home, so I'm usually in, and sometimes I don't have a lot to do. The first day was one of those lazy days. It was about 4 p.m., and I'm sitting on my sofa watching some daft shit about alien cover-ups. Someone knocked on my door. I have a surveillance camera hidden in a wooden canopy above the front door, so I checked to see who it was because I wasn't expecting any deliveries, and I couldn't be bothered to deal with a salesperson. It was a woman who looked to be in her late 40s to early 50s, very smartly dressed, like really expensive clothes and jewelry. Stuff I could never afford. Most people around here generally couldn't afford it either. We are not in an affluent area, and this lady stuck out like a sore thumb. She looked flustered and agitated, glancing towards the back garden before trying to look through the teeny frosted glass window on the front door. I noticed that she was carrying a dog lead, but I didn't see a dog. As it happens, at the far side of my back garden, there are 2 hedges. There's the hedges that I own within my property boundaries, and there's a second hedge outside of my boundary that's council owned along a small grassland where people walk their dogs. I know for a fact that there's a hole in the council-owned hedges, which I've reported to the council at least a dozen times over the past decade, and they've done the square root of sod all about it. Because of my hedge, I can't reach it to do anything about it myself. Consequently, when I saw the dog's lead, I thought, shit, I bet a dog has gone through the hole. If it's a big dog, it's not getting into my garden, but if it's a small dog, it might be able to work its way through. And I've always had some cooked meat, so I figured I might be able to lure it out. I'm a dog lover, so of course, I wanted to help this woman if I could. When I was a kid, my dog went missing for a few weeks, and I thought I was never going to get it back. I was heartbroken for those weeks, but fortunately, we did get him back, and ever since then I've been extremely sensitive to pets in need. I open the door and this woman gives me the weirdest look, like she's expecting someone completely different to answer the door, and that I shouldn't be there. To be fair to her, my mom used to live here, so I don't think too much of the weird look to begin with. Maybe she's expecting my mom. I say, "Hello?" And she stares at me for the longest 30 seconds before she tries to look past me and asks to see Margaret. I don't know what it is about other people's mistakes, but whenever someone has the wrong number, I always end up apologizing as if it's my fault. So that's what I did. Apologized and told her that there was no Margaret at this address. Again, she gives me that look, only this time there's anger behind it. "Yes, there is," she insists. It occurs to me at this point that I have a relative called Margaret, but she lives about 60 miles away and I haven't seen her in years. Nonetheless, just in case she's got her addresses muddled, I asked, "Are you looking for Margaret Smith?" But she hisses at me, "You know exactly who I'm looking for. What have you done with her?" I'm absolutely lost at this point. I've lived here for 20 years and I know the name of the previous owner, so I know she's not asking for them. I also know the names of the neighbors and the names of the people who have lived on the street in the time I've been here and since moved. None of them are called Margaret, so all I can do is tell her that she's got the wrong address. "No, this is," and then she says my address. "You're lying." That was a tad alarming. She's at the right address. She's not knocked on the wrong door. However, she clearly thinks I've done something to someone who, to my best knowledge, has never lived here. I don't know how long the previous owner had this house, but we must be talking about at least 30 years since anyone called Margaret might have lived here. It's at this point that I notice that she subtly wrapped that dog lead around her now clenched fist, like she was planning to use it as a weapon. In my youth, I did plenty of self-defense training, so I'm not exactly scared of her, but I'm obviously getting a bit concerned about the situation that's brewing. I don't particularly wish to get involved in a brawl on my doorstep with a complete stranger. I'm torn between shutting the door in her face or trying to de-escalate the situation. In the end, I close the door a little so she gets less to aim at and tell her, "Look, I don't know who you're looking for, but if you think something happened to your friend, maybe you should call the police and let them sort it out." Sure enough, the woman slams her fist with a lead around it into my door. I later discovered she struck the door hard enough to crack the frosted glass window in the middle of it. She's bleeding from doing it. It must have hurt. But she didn't flinch or show any sign of pain. What the hell? Any confidence I had in my self-defense classes started to waver because I'm not used to people who don't feel pain. All I can think now is that she's on something and having a really bad trip. So at this point, I put on my scariest voice and tell her, "Get the fuck back." I let her know that I'm calling the police, and if she's still here when they get there, she can deal with them because I'm not dealing with her anymore. She tries to stop me from closing the door, but I shove her back and manage to close it and lock it. I make it a point to stand next to the door while I'm calling 911 so she can hear me. While I'm waiting for the police to turn up, I watch her on the surveillance feed. She moves out of shot multiple times, presumably to check the back of the house, and I hear her calling out for Margaret. A few minutes before the police turn up, I see her kick over my wheelie bins in rage, but then the most chilling thing happens. She walks back to the front door and literally stares directly into my camera. That camera is very well hidden. I'm not saying that nobody could spot it, but most people would only know it's there if they had been looking for it. Most people aren't looking for cameras, right? She knew it was there. She must have eyeballed it previously. When? I don't know. I later reviewed all the footage I had that day, and she never made eye contact with it once. She never even looked in that direction. I only had about a week's worth of footage before the oldest footage was overwritten, and I checked everything I had, and she was only on camera that day. All I could think is that she had been there the week prior. While she's staring right at it, she flips me the finger and makes a throat-cutting gesture before walking off. I head to the window to watch her leave, and she's walking like she doesn't have a care in the world. She doesn't look back, just wanders away. Police finally showed up. Good job. Luckily I wasn't being murdered. They take my statement. I give them a copy of the surveillance footage, and that's that. I called a couple times to follow up, but nothing. Nobody called me about it. I won't lie, this messed me up for a few weeks. I moved the knife block closer to the door, though out of sight of any of the windows. I started staying up really late and not getting much sleep, which really didn't help. On some nights, I was so tired I started experiencing auditory hallucinations. I heard people talking who weren't there, and because this woman was the cause of all my stress, I heard her voice and the name Margaret most of all. Every time I heard the gate open, it put me on edge. I'd review the surveillance footage every day. Eventually, as the weeks passed and I hadn't heard anything else, I started to regain some of my comfort and just put it down to a weird experience. It didn't last. About 4, maybe 5 weeks after the first encounter, she came back. It was just after midnight. I was in my living room mucking around on my phone with the TV on low volume for some background noise. I heard a car door slam and peeked out the front window. A dark-colored car was parked at the end of my driveway. I couldn't see what make or model it was, but it looked like some sort of estate car. I think Americans call them station wagons, right? I didn't see anyone moving about, but a minute or two later, the front gate swung open with a metallic groaning and there was a knock on my door. Even when I'm not involved in a blood feud over imaginary Margarets, I'm not going to answer the door at this time. I checked the surveillance camera. Its night vision mode is pretty shitty, but I'm positive it's a woman again. I can see what I think is the dog lead, and of course, she knows I'm watching her because she looks right at the camera again. And I tell you, when someone is already giving you the heebie-jeebies, the way the night vision makes people's eyes look like soulless black voids doesn't do much to make you feel better. Suddenly she yells out, "Shut that fucking racket off and come out here now." I had the TV on, but as I mentioned, it was on a very low volume. There was no way that she could hear it from outside the front door. I couldn't even hear it as I walked into the hallway. I'm convinced at this point that she's mentally unwell, so I call the police again. I want them to stay on the line, but they just tell me that someone will be over soon, and to call them back immediately if things escalate. So I'm waiting, watching, and just hoping that she doesn't try to smash the window open or something. She kicks over my wheelie bin again. Don't know what she has against them, and yells something else, which I couldn't quite make out, but whatever it was enough for one of my neighbors to come and investigate themselves. I watched the neighbor talking to her for a minute. She's remonstrating about something, wagging her finger towards my door, but my neighbor is eventually able to get her to leave. He even sticks around for a bit to make sure she's gone. Sadly, that also means she was gone before the police turned up again, and made me feel like I was a bother to them. Another statement, handing over more security footage, more nothing. I caught up with a neighbor the next day, and he apologized because it didn't occur to him to make note of the registration plate. But he also told me that she said much of the same thing that she had said to me previously, that she wanted to know where Margaret was and what I've done with her. I'm grasping for answers at this point. Even if she's mentally unwell, the fact that she's sticking to this Margaret story and has the right address makes me think that there's something more to this than someone having a breakdown. Then it clicks. Is Margaret her dog? Does she think that I've stolen her dog? Does she think that her dog went through the hole in the back? Does she think I've hurt her dog? Is that what this is about? It'd be another few weeks before she came back. This time at 3 a.m., I am awoken up by knocking at the door. A few minutes later, I hear tapping on my bedroom window. I know it's her. I can hear her saying things, but I can't really make them out because it's too muffled through the windows. It's like she didn't want to get the neighbors out again, and she's trying to keep quiet. I jump out of bed and put some clothes on as quickly as I can. I try to follow her as best as I can as she moves around the outside of my house, from room to room, knocking, tapping, and muttering. I think I hear a few coherent words like noise, racket, and I'm pretty sure she called me a bitch, but maybe I'm imagining that. I can't check the surveillance footage this time because she spray painted the damn lens. Not that it mattered much this time. She's not lingering by the front door. I think about calling the police again, but it's proven to be a waste of time so far. And I get a feeling if I call them a third time and she's gone, they're just gonna start accusing me of wasting their time, even though I do have evidence. They've not exactly been helpful so far. In the end, I wait by the front door and listen to her. Eventually, she knocks again, and I call out, "Is Margaret your dog?" Dead silence. Nothing. I can't see anything through the frosted glass because it's too dark. I have no idea where she is. I don't want to turn the outside light on. I don't even know why. She knows I'm in the house because I called out to her, but I still didn't want to draw any more attention to myself. I end up standing there for who knows how long, at least an hour, probably more because the sun starts coming up. My heart is going a mile a minute, pretty much the whole time. Once it's bright enough, I start checking through the windows to see if I can see her. Nope, nothing. I cautiously open the front door and look outside. Still can't see her. I grab something to arm myself with, just in case, can't remember what now, and check all around my house and the back garden. She's not there. As I'm heading back to the front door, I spot the oddest thing. The gate's closed. That gate is physically attached to the side of my house, and when it opens and closes, it makes a fair bit of noise. You definitely hear if someone opened or closed it when you were standing next to the front door, but it's closed. So what does that mean? Did she jump over it somehow? It's possible, I guess, but I wouldn't want to try it. Anyway, I open the gate and head out to the end of the driveway. I look around and there's no sign of anyone. I turn back to my house to see spray painted "liar" on the front of my house and the dog lead on the floor beneath it. That was, thankfully, the last time I heard from or saw this woman, but I still think she comes by sometimes. Ever since this all happened, I get the creeped out feeling occasionally at night and check out the windows. I don't know whether I'm imagining it or what, but now and again, I swear I see a dark colored estate car out on the street. Not parked at the end of my driveway these days, but I just can't shake the feeling that she's there, watching my house. Perhaps she's looking for her dog, and she keeps thinking that she'll see me with it.